Welcome to Dear Romance Writer, your home for the questionable advice for the bewildered and befuddled, random pop culture recommendations, and conversations about you feelings. Be sure to send in your letters seeking advice on our anonymous form at dearromancewriter.com.
Dear Romance Writer is part of the Frolic Podcast Network, a podcast community of everything romance and romance related. If you're into romance fiction of any flavor, the Frolic Podcast Network includes shows that feature book club style discussions, author interviews, comedy, critique, and fantastic conversations as well.
It includes some of the most innovative, interesting, and entertaining podcasts, including Kinda Dating, Crappy Friends, My Imaginary Friends, Smart Podcast Trashy Books, and Jeff and Will's Big Gay Fiction Podcast. What does this mean for you, the listener? More shows to enjoy and more opportunities for us to introduce you to great episodes and new podcasts you'll love. Find new shows to add to your podcast subscriptions at frolic.media/podcasts. Now on to this week's show.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Dear Romance Writer. I am Zio Axelrod.
I'm Roan Parrish.
And our guest today is Dr. Robin Smith, my aunt, but we're excited to have her with us. We are missing one of our co-hosts today. Avery is under the gun. She's on deadline, so she could not join us today, but she's here with us in spirit. So hi, Avery.
Hi, Avery.
So Dr. Robin is here, and her bio, like she's my aunt, and even if she wasn't my aunt, I would be told all of her because she's amazing. But I'm just gonna read her bio because it's just nuts. Okay, Dr. Robin is a licensed psychologist and ordained minister with a PhD in counseling psychology, who has worked with Fortune 100 and 500 companies, sports and entertainment professionals to offer conflict management, diversity and inclusion training, executive performance coaching, and more. An experienced media and television personality, she's the author of several books, including the New York Times #1 best-selling Lies at the Altar, The Truth About Great Marriages. Her other titles include Inspirational Vitamins, A Guide to Personal Empowerment, and the soulful memoir, Hungry, The Truth About Being Full. She's appeared and shared her expertise on news and entertainment television programs, including ABC's Good Morning America, CNN, NBC's The Today Show, the Fox News Channel, The Queen Latifah Show, Anderson Cooper. We're there now. Anderson Cooper, and as a therapist in residence on the Oprah Winfrey Show, where everyone knows her as just Dr. Robin. And I love her catchphrase, which is "Learn, live, lead fearlessly," and it's trademarked. It should be trademarked. But yeah, so welcome, Dr. Robin.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here, and of course, Zio, because you are my niece, but also I'm happy because you are such a powerful artist, and it's true, and I love being with women of all ages and kind of ethnicities and people who are living in the world in similar and different ways. So this is really exciting to be with you and Roan, and missing Avery, but I know she's with us in spirit. So this is great.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. We have some really good letters today, so I'm excited to get your input on these. We'll kick it off with the one that we found. I think this was from Gamer. It's a queer gaming website, and I think they just started their advice podcast or their advice column like earlier this year, so it's pretty new. So we're happy to shout them out. But the letter is: my girlfriend moved in with me at the beginning of first lockdown when we'd been dating for 3 months, which is fast, but we didn't want to lock down long distance, quote unquote. We've been together for a year now, and we're happy. She's great. Nobody is doing anything wrong, but it feels very old married couple. Routine has set in. For our recent anniversary, she made my favorite meal, which is sweet, but we also have it in rotation in our meal plan. Maybe it's just a pandemic thing because it isn't like 2020 didn't suck for all of us, but I can't help but feel like I want a do-over. What do I do? So This just sounds like staleness has set in here, I guess.
It is. I love the question and the curiosity in the question, like, what do I do? And exploring, not blaming, as I hear the question, I don't hear blame. I hear curiosity about like what's possible and how did we end up feeling like an old married couple? Some of it is COVID. I mean, the pandemic, we've never been through it, any of us. And there is something about being quarantined with people we know well, or those who we kind of just met and then ended up living with, which can feel both comforting and, as things begin to thaw out a bit, somewhat overwhelming. Like, how do we keep the fire? How do we nurture the passion in the face of fear and uncertainty? I mean, fear and uncertainty can lead to connection, but it also can kind of squash some of our creativity. I mean, you both are artists, meaning you're writers and you're creatives. And as I do, that when there is something heavy sitting on us, consciously or unconsciously, it can get in the way of our creativity flowing. And so I really feel for this person that quite possibly the do-over they're looking for may be much simpler than they think and much closer than they think. My suggestion is this, that instead of kind of looking for what's missing, turn your frustration into a request, not only of your partner, but of yourself. A lot of times when something's off, we know how to complain about it. But for what I encourage people to do is take the complaint and create a request. So the request might look or sound something like this. We've been together, we came together because we didn't want to do a long distance, connection during COVID. And while this feels good to me, there is something that I'm grieving. So that's taking ownership. There's something I'm grieving. There's something that I would like to see different in our connection. So for instance, and then get concrete. For instance, my birthday or our anniversary, you did something really sweet. But my request is that we think of something together that is new. Something that is different than what we would usually do. So if that menu item or that dinner is kind of in our normal rotation, simply because we had to figure out, again, how to eat and stay at home and stay safe, that maybe what you're asking and your request is, let's have something that is new for both of us. So you've created both an opportunity for something more, but you're not asking your partner to read your mind.
Yeah.
That's where we get in trouble, when we're asking our partner, like, they should know. And why didn't they know? It's not special because it's in the rotation already. And they may be thinking, well, it's one of your favorite things. That's why it's in the rotation. So,
and they haven't been together that long enough to realize that this is something that they like. It's like a surprise or something.
Right. And it may be not only that they've not been together that long, but they came together in terms of living together under a very tough time.
Yeah.
So there are just things in all of our lives, in all of our hearts, in all of our bodies that are kind of shifting, and we're needing to recalibrate. Who am I now in this moment after 18 months or 22 months or however long we're still needing to make sense of social distancing and vaccines and, all of the kind of non-sexy parts of survival.
Right.
So we have to be more mindful, not critical, but just more mindful that it does take more effort and work to spice up even a meal or a birthday or an anniversary. The other thing I will just remind, everyone who is tuning in, and I think this is something, I practice in my own life, is that it is easier to complain than it is to constructively ask for what we want. And it's easier simply because we've had more models for people complaining than we have of people who don't expect a mind reader. It's a part of maturity that, even though I'd love for you to know it without my saying it, a part of being grown up is asking for what I want, and
Expressing yourself.
letting that become a turn on. A turn on meaning to me, the self, that I'm actually able to ask for what I want. And it's a very different way of seeing aliveness and vitality and passion, that it's not always in the seat or the hands of the other, but I can turn myself on by taking care of myself and by being able to ask and give language to my own needs.
You're totally speaking Rowan's language, because she is always on this program talking about talk, speak, like express. And she's
Yeah.
And I love that formulation of turning yourself on or caring for yourself, like turning the ask into self-care and self-celebration. And I really love that. And I think one thing that's interesting is that relationships during COVID have been really different for some people, because what we had was an environment, a world that was inundated with fear, uncertainty, surprise, excitement, not in a good way. And I think it's actually not very surprising to me that this relationship would have sort of fast tracked to old married couple, because I think like old married couple is synonymous with comforting, predictable, calm, soothing,
steady,
and that is an antidote to everything that is outside of the relationship. And so I don't think that I don't think that COVID has had the negative effect of making your relationship turn out this way. I think you have constructed and participated in a relationship that is giving you the complementary to what is outside of it. And of course, one downside for you in this instance is that you've cultivated this relationship of predictability and calm, soothing care, but sometimes that doesn't include surprise and a newness and excitement. And so it could be that, you're like, maybe if COVID weren't going on, your partner wouldn't have been routinely cooking your favorite meal, because you guys would have been scrambling, coming home from work, and you would have eaten out more. There wouldn't have been time. So actually, it's not that she did something repetitive on your birthday. It's that you get to celebrate something like your birthday every 2 weeks, because you have this time and this space to cultivate those moments of care in this other way. Like, I think you can just as easily think of it the other way. And so, I think that idea of asking yourself, like, what are the parts of routine, comfort, coziness that I like about this quote unquote old married couple relationship, and preserving those, like making that really explicit, saying, I love that we know each other so well that we have a meal plan that we both really like. I love that we, instead of going out every night, get to cuddle in our PJs and watch our favorite shows. I love that I know I can just bring you coffee every day at 1 p.m. and you're going to want it, and we'll get to have a little kiss and a cuddle at lunchtime. Like, I love those things and I want to preserve them. And then creating a separate list of things that are like, one of the things that makes those so special and comforting and nourishing and soothing would be if we had these moments where actually we get to plan some really fun, exciting stuff for both of us. For example, my birthday, every other Friday night, whatever you think the thing is. And then it's not like throwing the baby out with the bathwater, where you say that this old married couple relationship is a bad thing. It's that you preserve the pieces of it that you want to preserve, and you make space. And as Dr. Robin said, make explicit the things that you really want and why you want them in the moments that you want something more exciting, so that it is like building together what pieces of both those kinds of relationships you both want.
I mean, the whole relationship has been fast tracked, because like, I don't think they would be moving in together after 3 months if none of this was going on in the outside world. So they would have had that space to retreat to, and they come together and then do things together. But like you said, Roan, everything became about comfort and routine and care when the world was in chaos. So I think just stepping back, and the world's opened up a little bit, and I don't know where these people are in the world, somewhere in the US, I guess, but not everybody can go walk outside or go do something outside of the house. So if they're stuck in the house, finding those things that are just that break the routine without demolishing the routine, keep, like you said, keep the things that you love, and just sort of throw in a little spice every once in a while. I think they'll be fine. They just, I think the term old married couple is always has such a negative connotation, because if you're a married couple who's been together for a long time, you must be doing something right. You know what I mean? So like, hopefully you've been doing something right. So I think that's not a, calling it that is just like, that's a good thing. Like, you guys you're compatible, and you're companionable, and you have found a life together, and that's wonderful. So just find a way to express those little extra things that you want, those little special moments that you want.
Yeah. And one of the things my girlfriend and I love to do, I think actually the idea of old married couple sounds great to me. I feel like I want 90% old married couple and 10% like 16-year-old mindless idiot. That's like my ideal relationship thing. And so one of the things that my girlfriend loved to do are theme dates. And they're really, really easy because you take things that you already were going to do and just build them out. So for example, we were going to go to, there's an archaeology museum in Philadelphia, and we haven't done this date yet, but it's like on the list and it's planned. And so she asked if I wanted to go to the archaeology museum, and I was like, yes. And what if we make like an archaeology date day of it? So we're going to dress up in outfits that are going to like, like 19th century archaeologist style. Awesome. Whatever that means.
Indiana Jones.
Exactly. Try not to like unleash any curses. Go to the museum and like bring little notebooks and do kind of like naturalist sketches while we're there and talk about the exhibits, and then go home, make dinner, and watch this movie Ammonite, which is about like a 20th century seashell scientist. It's a lesbian romance, looks very adorable. And that would be like an afternoon and an evening of a date. And it's like going to a museum, again, when things are safe, going to a museum, not super outside the box, eating dinner and watching a movie, not super outside the box. But the intentionality is what makes it fun, is that you're sharing something together. You can like be characters if you want to, or just have a chance to dress up, or have a chance to like have conversation about the museum that you're having during dinner, which is a little different than having conversation about the Zoom meeting where your boss was acting annoying. Building in a little bit of excitement into things that you might otherwise do. You also don't need a museum thing. You could say like, we're gonna look for YouTube videos about conspiracy theories, and we're gonna watch them, and then we're gonna like try to create our own conspiracy theory and figure out how we would germinate.
How your brain works.
These are the things I find romantic. You're fine with take your own, run with it. But just like something that is participatory, that's fun, that's just a little bit outside the box.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. I don't think it'll take much for them to, because like the word happy is in here a couple of times. We're happy, everything's happy, everyone's good. So I think it'll just be a quick conversation, like, let's think of some fun things we can do, and I'm not worried about these people at all.
Yeah. And I think that's why I was saying that, not to oversimplify it or to make them feel like we didn't, get that they want, an intervention, some help, some support. Yeah. But there was a sense about this letter that it's really asking just to expand what is already good, to expand what is already rich. And so that's really exciting.
Yeah, and I love how they say, well, the letter writer says that they want a do-over. And I think actually that could be a place to start. Like that could be a really sweet romantic place to start, is saying like, what if we have a new first date? Or what if we have a celebration of living together? We've been together for 1 year. What if for our anniversary, we do like pretend we don't know each other, meet at a bar, or, like we say, okay, so we're going to start over. What is the thing that I can do that would excite you the most, that would thrill you, that would comfort you? And those are conversations that in and of themselves, I think are great upkeep for a relationship, but also can just be fun and exciting and reveal things that you wouldn't have otherwise known. Because even if you've been living together, being together with someone for a year, there's still tons that you do not know about each other. That's just like waiting.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of the myth about the old married couple is that they know everything about each other. The truth of the matter is, even that old married couple who has the comfort and the familiar, journey that they've made together, there are still things that they too are discovering about themselves, about each other, and about their relationship. And I think we miss that in, that term old married couple. And we don't realize that couple is still very much evolving.
Yeah.
Very much
Because people are
unfolding.
always changing. People are always
Absolutely.
growing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And probably what let them stay together so long is to always be interested in learning about those changes for each of them.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Cool. Well, hopefully listeners, viewers have gotten something out of that.
I like what you said, Theo. I'm not too worried about them. I think
I think they're,
or once we have not something horrible.
Yeah, with the last couple of episodes, we've had some really heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Well, this next segment, the segment's not light, so
it's true. I spoke too soon. I shouldn't have set us up for joy when we are about to experience joy.
Yeah.
So, okay, this is our "What Would You Do" segment, and this is a segment where we read a problem that someone has, and we sort of, you can give advice, whatever. But I tend to think of this a little bit more as like, what would I do if it were actually me, as opposed to just giving advice. So I'm going to read this for us.
Looks like it's from Reddit. I think it's from Reddit.
Oh, good. Thank you. I always forget to say where they're from. Alrighty. So from Reddit, I, 32-year-old female, lost respect for my husband, 29-year-old male. I'm starting to realize that I don't have respect for my husband. He's constantly insecure about our relationship. He gets insecure that I don't want him around if I'm not jumping out of my shoes in excitement when he comes home, even though I give him a hug and tell him I missed him. He gets insecure about intimacy when we haven't had sex in a week, even though I've been on my period. He gets insecure if I give him affection because he thinks I do it out of obligation. I tell him I love him. I try to talk about his insecurities and work through them with him. I try to offer a podium to talk and understanding, but he continues to feel insecurities. Now I get pissed in our conversations and I say exactly how I feel frustrated and why I need him to meet me halfway. And I get a mediocre response of, well, I need to process that. After the first conversation, sure, that's fine. Please take the time to process. After the second, of course, I'll clarify and help you understand. After the third, fourth, fifth, God knows how many conversations about the exact same thing in so many different ways, I'm at my wit's end. I hate stereotypes, but I can't help but resort to feeling like he needs to freaking man up. I am not in charge of his feelings. I do not wish to constantly monitor my communication so as not to make him feel insecure, and I certainly do not want to baby him through his feelings. I told him I need him to be direct with me, and what I got in return is, I need to process that. Yet days or weeks later, his insecurities inevitably pop up again, and we have the same conversation, and I point out that he's feeling the same insecurity, and he goes ahead with the deflection. Guys, I don't know what to do here. Has anyone had a similar experience?
Yeah.
I would like to say that Dear Romance Writer does not advocate use of the phrase man up.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I almost stopped reading when I got to that the first time I read this, like, oh, here we go. But yeah,
but I think that I don't wish to harp on it, but I do think it gives us some useful insight, actually, as like a pitchfork to start picking apart the question, is that this letter writer, to my eye, seems to think that knowing, understanding, and being able to deal with your feelings is a kind of toughness, resiliency, manliness, womanliness, whatever. Like, that's what it means being an adult. It seems that she thinks that someone who doesn't know how they feel and doesn't know how to deal with it is childlike.
Yeah.
He is clearly placing the two of them into this really problematic schema where if he doesn't understand feelings and doesn't know how to process them, he's like a child, and that casts her in the role of the mother. And I think many of us agree that there is very little that's less sexy than the person you're dating treating you like their parent. And so I think that it's not just about the insecurity. That seems to me actually like a completely separate issue. Like, he's insecure in their relationship.
Yeah.
He's clearly insecure, and that has everything to do with him and nothing to do with her.
Yeah.
But then there's this other issue that I think is that she is like, this dynamic places us in a relationship that I don't want to be having, which is like, I'm not your mom. I don't want to take care of you. I don't want to baby you. I don't want to be in charge of those things. So yeah, to me, those are two separate issues. What did you guys think?
Yeah, it's interesting. My take, my heart, what I really heard is that some of her frustration is because she's struggling with managing whose life she's responsible for. And it feels as if she's taking a lot of responsibility to guide him, inform him, instruct him, correct him. And as you said, that is parental. It could be, professorial. I mean, it could, but it's not partner-like. It is not. So there's something.
They're not equals.
They're not right. They're not equals. And I'm wondering, we could talk about his insecurities and what that's about, but that's his story. That's his work to do. It feels like her work is to realize that quite possibly she's spending too much of her time and energy trying to fix or address or change him, and not using her energy to address or face that which is her own story. Like, what did she learn? What are the models in her own life for letting someone figure some things out on their own? So I'm wondering, if there's someone in her life that has been hyper responsible, intrusive, critical. We learned these things. So it doesn't make her bad or him bad. It's not about good or bad. It has to do with being awake. And I'm wondering what injuries and what storyline she's coming from, who parented her or didn't, who affirmed her or criticized her, who inflated her value or deflated it. And I think if she can spend some time and energy being more curious about that than she is about fixing him, it might be interesting to see how the story and the relationship unfolds.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure his insecurities don't start and end with his relationship with her.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if has insecurities with work or with other relationships. And I think she feels like she's giving him all the tools to deal with it. And she's not equipped to do that. She's not meant to do that, right. But she feels like, I'm giving you all the time to talk. I'm trying to be understanding. Like, why aren't you fixing this? Or why aren't you better or whatever? And so that her frustration is definitely coming through that's where the man up thing. I think that's where that's coming from. I hope that's where that's coming from.
Well, the man up and the criticism, that somehow he's just not getting it. Like, he's thick. He can't figure it out. These stereotypes that are so damaging to him, damaging to her, if she's bought into that, and how is that playing itself out in their relationship? So if she could take, the word repentant, people use in a religious way, but what repentant really means is it means to turn around, to make I say to make a U-turn. And so often we have passed our own exit on the highway. We've passed our own exit and we're just going down the road trying to take care of somebody else's life, somebody else's story, somebody else's pain, somebody else's insecurity, when life is really asking us to repent, to make a U-turn, and come back to the self, come back to, not to blame the self, but to be curious and realize that at times we distract ourselves from our own work because we are overly invested in someone else. And so I think it would, I invite this writer, I invite her of this letter, to be kind to herself and to be curious about her own exit that she quite possibly has passed, and that her life is really inviting her to turn around and come back and use that energy and her heart and her, her ability to even express herself. She's tired, but tired because possibly, again, she's using her energy in places that are not hers to really feed. And if she were to feed herself and to become full of her own abundance, again, it's quite interesting what's possible in relationships when we can self-soothe in healthy ways, and when we can use curiosity instead of criticism. So I think there's some work for her to do for herself, and after she's done some of that work, to reevaluate what is needed in the relationship with her husband.
It's like the airplane safety tip where they say put your mask on first.
Definitely.
Before you put the mask on the person sitting next to you. Yeah.
And it could be that at the end of that reflection, which I think is such a great point, that what she realizes is that he's an empty well, that her love will never fill. And I think this is the thing with insecurity, is that I don't think that his insecurity has anything to do with her. I would bet that she's right, that she's showing him a reasonable amount of what to her is a reasonable amount of affection and care. And I think it would be great for her to ask, are there things that I could do or say that would make you feel affirmed, appreciated, loved? And maybe he can guide her to some that would work specifically well for him. But in the absence of that, like, there are some people you can't satisfy in their current configuration. And it could be that until then, she's just pouring all that energy, all that love, all that affection into a black hole that will never be filled up. And it could be that that is the time that she looks at the relationship and says, you know what, it's actually like I have only so much energy and love to give, and I want to give it to someone where it will be received.
It can be received,
and
exactly.
That might not be him, but I don't think that that's really about him not understanding or not knowing what she's saying, not processing properly. I think that's about him needing to do his own work and her do her own work and come back together and say, in the place where we are now, do we meet each other or are we a mismatch?
Yeah, I mean, early on when she says things like, you know, if I don't get really excited when he comes home, like she's a pet or something, like, you know, like they jump around like, oh, you're home. Yeah. Like, you know, the level of reassurance that he needs is not the same as where she, you know, so I feel like they've had a conversation about what he needs, but not so much about what she needs.
Yeah. Yeah. And she may have used, I think, Zio, that's a great point, that she may be using her energy again, focusing on what he needs, what he's not getting. And really, this is again the invitation to make the U-turn and come back to her own home, inner home of what do I need? And what is the conversation that would be important for me, you know, for her to be having. I think the other piece that you both have spoken about, which I think is so important, and I mentioned this earlier, we all come to relationships with a story. And sometimes we're really interested in someone else's story and what they bring. And we are much less fluent in our own stories. And so I also just would welcome or invite her to welcome, what is the story? You know, Roan, as you were saying, that this is, you know, and Zio, you said this too, the insecurity is very much not about, you know, her, what she's not doing. Yes. And I wonder, what is it about being hooked in his story that is about her story? So who is it that she couldn't please? You know, does she have a mother, a father, a grandma, a grandpa? I mean, who is it in her life that she either watched, you know, kind of bang their own head against a wall that just, you know, was uncrackable, and maybe equating that with love or equating that with commitment. And so this is important for her to understand. What is it about this dynamic and this dance that is as much about her own narrative as it is about whatever, his story is in terms of the insecurity. And so I really do hope that she will get curious, become curious, and just ask, these questions. I do this in my own life. I've been a psychologist for a long time. I've worked with, thousands of families and couples and individuals over the years. And I have my own family, I have my own story. I have my own brokenness. And there are ways in which earlier in my life, I spent a lot of time wanting to both be seen by people who could not see me, be valued by people who could not value because of their own, brokenness and stories. But I used a lot of energy there. And I had a lot to learn. And so it's really important that all of us can look at, again, what story am I bringing? Where is my woundedness showing up and playing itself out? And how might I care for myself in this moment? So I want her to think again about self-care and what kind of care does she need right now from herself, not just from him, but from herself.
Yep. Yeah. Yes. Well, thank you for being here today. My goodness, this was it's like a breath of fresh air.
Well, I love it. Thank you guys for having me so much. One of the things I didn't share at the beginning is I've got this new radio show.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that. Tell us more.
Is going to on Sirius XM, channel 126. It'll be the Dr. Robin Show, and it starts Sunday, September 19th. It'll be 11 a.m. in the East and at different times all around the country. So I'm really excited. And really, the show is about what we just talked about. It's about life. It's about our blind spots. It's about learning to be tender and practice self-compassion. To live in curiosity as well as instead of criticism, so that, just to remind us in this moment that when we feel critical, it's an invitation to become curious. So when I feel critical, which certainly happens, it's my invitation to become curious about what just stirred me. What is this judgment about in me? What is this criticism? I have a prescription that was a big part of my own transformation and healing. Zio knows I was in 2 really serious car accidents, one in 2010, and then another one in 2016. And they both were costly, emotionally and physically, financially, my career. So this return to radio is a big deal. I had a show on Sirius XM on Oprah Radio for 3 years, and now I'm coming back and really very excited. But the prescription I use for my own transformation is wake up, show up, grow up, rise up. And so we're going to, as I interview people, I answer questions, I take calls. I have some really exciting interviews coming up, which will look, some people are celebrities in the public eye or other thought leaders, writers, authors. It will be a little bit of everyone, but I'll be taking them through this wake up, show up, grow up, rise up. Like, what was the moment of awakening? What made me wake up? What is the moment of, to show up for active duty in our own lives? What is the moment of grow up? We talked here today on your show about maturity. We all have the fantasy about our minds being read by our partners or our parents or by our bosses or someone. And then we realize, I got to open my mouth. I've got to learn how to articulate what I want. So there is this, wake up, show up, grow up. That's the maturity piece, so that we can rise up to live the life that we want to live, that we are worthy to live, that we deserve to live. So that'll be, again, Sirius XM, channel 126, starting September 19th. And my website is drrobinsmith.com. So you can find out about me and my offerings. And I have a new website rolling out.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it.
I can't wait. I can't wait to see all of it either. So that's really exciting. So there's just a lot of good work, and I'm doing some writing, starting to work on a new book, and that's exciting. And at some point I'll be following the two of you, and a podcast is coming as well. So
cool. Yay.
Yeah.
Wow, so many good things. I'm so happy.
So many good things.
And we'll link to everything in our show notes, so everyone who's listening can find you all the places and check out your show and your new website and all the books and resources that you have there.
Yeah.
Thank you so
much for being here today. We
Thank you I appreciate, and I just love that you young women are, out there in the world doing what you do, creating and writing and performing, and also creating, a platform here where people can come safely and become curious about themselves through letters and, asking. So thank you for allowing me to be part of this. Very special.
Thank you.
So for this week's recipe, I've got one that I just made when two lovely friends of mine were coming through town, and had them over for a little cheese plate snack situation, during which time I dropped the best tasting of the cheeses on my own foot, and it splattered.
Oh no.
It was so ridiculous. Don't worry, I scraped it all off. I didn't serve it to them, but I did eat it later.
That's your
but
foot.
Okay. You can, a cheese that can splat like that means it was at perfect room temperature. It was a soft cheese. It was really, you can't waste something like that. You gotta eat it off your own foot. Anyway, one of the things that I made to go along with it, because I love a well-balanced cheese plate in terms of sweet, savory, hard, soft, fresh, cooked, is I made some candied nuts, like a candied nut mix.
Yeah.
And there are lots of ways you can do this. You can do it on the stove top, you can do it in the oven, whatever. You can use like a little bit of water to make things stick, or you can use like an egg white or whatever you want. A little maple syrup, doesn't matter. But it's so good. You can really make them, as long as you have some kind of nut and some kind of sugar, you can make them with whatever you have around, which is why they're a great last minute cheese plate edition. So basically my favorite kind are a combination of like pecans, pistachios, something like that. I'm not a walnut fan. I think they taste dusty, but you do you. So like a pound of mixed nuts, whatever kind you like, and then some brown sugar. And my favorite is the combination of brown sugar, salt, and cayenne pepper, because I love a little bit of a sweet, savory, spicy situation.
Right.
I also love to put used coffee grounds in there, like if they're not too chunky. And the coffee, it doesn't it just sort of bakes away. So you don't have like the crunch of the grounds, but you get that nice coffee flavor. Little cumin, so good. You can add some honey or maple syrup if you want them to be a little bit stickier, whatever you want. And basically you just toss your nuts to combine, throw them in the oven until till the sugar is like bubbly, or do them in a pan on the top of the stove until the sugar is bubbly. And they're amazing because then they have, they're crunchy, they're sweet, they're savory, and they're spicy.
Yeah.
And so they go with like every single component of a cheese plate, and delightful snack.
I love it. Yeah, I used to be allergic to a lot of different nuts. Never peanuts though, which is odd because that's like the one that everyone likes.
Oh yeah.
But over the last couple of years, I've been able to eat pecans. So I've been eating pecans like you wouldn't believe during the pandemic. It's ridiculous. I buy these like 2-pound bags, Kirkland bags of pecans, and I roast them again. I toast them for about 10 minutes because I like them to be just before they get burned.
Yes. Well, that's when the oil, it releases the oil, so you get that great like squick of oil on your teeth when you
Yeah.
Do you like pecan pie?
I do. Yeah.
I'm gonna make you a pecan dessert now that I know you can eat them.
That was my plan all along, just to mention pecans. I knew you would make
you played it perfectly. I walked directly into your trap.
Walked right into my trap. Well, this week's playlist is a little all over the place, I have to say. It was inspired more by the What Would You Do segment. So it has Killing Me Softly in it from the original version with Roberta Flack. But I've got Dolly Parton on there. I've got Chris Stapleton, Lady Gaga, Troye Sivan, Bill Withers. Like, it's a really all over the place playlist. But it's still pretty cool. And it's a really nice sort of transition from summer into fall playlist now that we're getting into fall.
Oh,
my
from
favorite
your
season
to God's ear, I cannot wait for fall.
I know you were the same. We were big autumn people, both Halloween people. Like, yeah, ready to go.
You know, that is making me realize that we need to start planning a Halloween episode.
Yes,
listeners, if you have any ideas or any questions, oh my God, wait. If you have, here's what I want. We may change our mind about this because Avery's not here.
Avery's not here, so
Avery's
we're just going rogue.
later and be like, what the hell did you Halloween loving freaks do? This is what I want. I want your most horrifying and spooky relationship stories.
Can I write in?
Yes.
Because I've got a great one.
Of course you can.
Cool,
we should share. We should each write one.
We should share ours. Yeah.
We should each write one and then have other people write in with theirs. This could be like, it doesn't have to be a romantic relationship. It could be someone you don't even know that well, but like, I'm talking spooky, messed up Halloween-y, not like the most awful, psychologically damaging. I mean, you can write us letters about those too, but you know, this is Halloween themed.
Right.
And we should each tell our own, and then we should read some from people and answer.
That is perfect idea. I love it. We have to do it, and Avery is not here to vote it down, so
yeah,
we're gonna do it. Sorry, Avery.
Halloween wins.
So what's your rec this week?
Okay, my rec this week, speaking of Halloween, was not planned, but is very on brand, is I'm always hesitant to recommend things in process. First of all, because I don't usually watch TV while it's on, but I'm a huge American Horror Story fan, and I have been watching the new season as it broadcasts because Timmy has actual real TV and I don't have to like scramble after the show's 2 years later like a TV squirrel. So we've been watching it. So the new season is
like an anthology or
so
something?
good.
Are they doing it like a different?
It's unclear. It's billed as a double feature. Right. And in the poster design, there is a creature that seems to have teeth and a creature that seems rather alien-like. So far, I think we're 4 episodes in, and we have gotten the creatures with teeth side of that double feature. So I'm imagining that it's going to be half and half, and that they will kind of like interconnect.
That's brilliant.
But it's set in Cape Cod in the winter, actually very near, in the town where Timmy and I are going for Halloween, speaking of. And so we're watching the show being like, oh my God, we're going to go to Cape Cod and never return. But here's what I have to say for anybody who has watched other series of American Horror Story.
Okay.
I think that that show and its creators are amazing and wonderful, and also batshit and terrible and like do so many things well and so many things badly. And it's just a delightful cornucopia of everything.
Yeah.
But usually where they lose me is that they create these wonderful characters and these amazing settings and great music. And then they fuck it up by bringing in like 20 garages worth of unnecessary plot twists that complicate everything and make it like clearly on purpose, make it so that you can never predict what's going to happen, except you still can. Right. And that's my general critique, is like they do all this great work and then they're like, and now run it in reverse. And then the whole show starts like just unspooling. But so far, and I don't know if it's like storytelling maturity or the setting or whatever, but so far, everything's on track. The characters are great, the conceit is great, and they haven't messed it up yet. And I'm really hoping that maybe since it's like a half and half season, that it's like 2 shorter, more in control stories that will cross over instead of one that they end up like spinning out. Right. But I will not spoil anything, but I will say that anyone who is interested in writing, art, creative pursuit, there's something very special for you in this season that has to do with a rather Faustian bargain about what would you do for the ultimate talent.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, I had the last season on my DVR and I just deleted it because now it's available on streaming. So I haven't seen last season. I haven't seen this season, but I was like, for the first 3 seasons, like every like 10 o'clock, whenever it came on, I was like in front of the television. Like it was just, yeah, I love that show.
Yeah, it's
As bad shit as it gets, it was still the most unique thing on television for
I
those first
totally
like few
agree.
years.
Yeah, and when that first season came out, I'm a horror fan, but I think that mostly up until American Horror Story, being a horror fan meant movies. And there were
Yeah.
just not that many shows that, there was like Dark Shadows
Yeah.
or Buffy, these things that were sort of like horror adjacent.
Yeah.
But I remember when that first season came on being like, wait, a horror TV show? That's amazing. And I watched it all at once. My friend Tracy was visiting me and we like stayed up all night to watch the whole first season of the Murder House season. And it was too much because it was like 12 hours or 9 hours or
Yeah.
whatever it was of horror.
Yeah.
And like the body just can't take it. So after about 6 hours, we started feeling like adrenal fatigue from all the scariness. But yeah, I think that it has revolutionized the way we tell horror stories in a way that is super fascinating. And I just finished watching all of so it's American Horror Story, but they did this spin-off American Horror Stories, plural, that is the anthology show that are the one-offs.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty bad. I mean, better than most of the schlocky horror stuff that's out there, but certainly not great.
Okay.
But it seemed like a lot of half-baked ideas that never made it into American Horror Story season, kind of like spun off for one episode things. And I was getting a little concerned about the most recent season. And then we watched the first episode and I was just like, oh, fuck, this has everything I love.
Okay. All right. Do you know that, have you been watching Creepshow at all? The new Creepshow?
No, is it good?
I haven't seen it yet. I was curious. So, but like we're getting into the season, so I'm going to be watching all the things. But yes, I will definitely check that out.
Do we need a spin-off podcast that is a horror podcast?
We might.
Okay, cool. Avery likes horror too, so really we could just turn this into a horror podcast.
Do a horror episode.
Our advice, watch a horror movie.
Yeah. Well, my rec is also a TV show. And it's funny because like I'm not a huge comics person, but I like the films that in the TV shows that come out of it's like I love the Umbrella Academy. Never read the graphic novel. You know what I mean? Like I like the Marvel movies. Don't read Marvel. So but the DC stuff, like I used to watch the Arrow. I used to watch Arrow when it first started, and I used to watch Flash. And then like they get 2 seasons in and then I lose interest. I don't know whether it's the characterization or just I don't know what it is, but like both shows I was like really gung-ho about them and then I lost interest. So I stumbled upon another DC property and it's on HBO Max. I think it may have been on a different network for the first 2 seasons, but now it's on HBO Max. So we just started watching the first season. I think we're about 5 episodes in, but it's called Doom Patrol. Ooh. And it's like these reject superheroes, I guess. They are all, it's interesting because first of all, Brendan Fraser is a star of it. And like, yeah. So like, that was like, I'm sold. But also Matt Bomer is in it.
I love him. And
this is my first show with him. I've never seen him in anything else. I know. So the thing that's really wild about it is the characters, there's 4 main characters. They all came into their power via tragedy. They were all not great people in their lives. And then this thing happens to them and it transforms them into quote unquote monsters with power. And it's really interesting the way they're playing around with like identity and being a good person versus a hero and stuff like that. It's really, really cool. But Cyborg is in it. Some of the like Cyborg is like the only superhero that I kind of knew from the Justice League stuff. But it's got a lot of potential. So I'm going to recommend it. I think the 3rd season starts soon. But I'm still in the 1st season, so I haven't gotten through the 2nd one. But I'm going to recommend it because I think it has a lot of potential. And it's Brendan Fraser. I'm going to support anything that he's in because he's amazing. And he gets to play a jerk, which he doesn't. He didn't.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, he was always, he was the guy. So it's interesting to see him in this role. But yeah, so check it out. Doom Patrol, HBO Max. Nice. Yeah.
And I love this because Matt Bomer, although you haven't seen it yet, is in some American Horror Story seasons. Yes. And one of the American Horror Stories episodes. And so this is like a perfect little.
I think he was in the last season that I sort of halfway watched, the one with Lady Gaga. Wasn't he in that season too? I think.
Yes. Yeah.
I think so. Yes. So I never finished that season. Life. So I have to
Yeah.
go back and finish that season. But yeah, so I have sort of seen something that he was in, but this is my first time going, oh my gosh, that's Matt Bomer. You know?
Were we talking on this show about my love of the show White Collar, or was I just thinking about that in my own
I
head?
think so.
Okay, well, White Collar is the first show that I ever saw Matt Bomer in, and he plays an art forger and criminal
Mhm.
who gets a ticket out of jail by consulting with the FBI on white collar crimes.
Okay.
So they use his things for good, quote unquote. Yeah,
Okay.
I highly recommend that you
Okay.
watch White Collar.
Okay. Oh, we'll be watching
Not only is it
now.
delightful, but I just feel like you in particular will appreciate the dynamic between him and his FBI handler.
Okay. Well, welcome to the Matt Bomer podcast. We're talking about this right. Yeah. Anyway, it's been a really fun episode, even though we didn't have Avery here with us.
I know, no Avery.
No
It's
Avery.
Cool. She'll be back with us next time.
Yes.
But
Absolutely.
thank you all so much for hanging out.
Yeah, thank you. Look for us on everywhere that you listen to podcasts. Check it out on YouTube. Leave comments. Write us letters. We still want to hear from you because we want to answer your letters.
Normal letters and Halloween letters.
Yes, yes. But until next time, we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much for subscribing to Dear Romance Writer. Remember to keep sending in those letters at dearromancewriter.com. We can't wait to tell you what to do. Dear Romance Writer is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more podcasts you'll love, frolic.media/podcasts.